You open your eyes, and the sky is gray. It's been gray for as long as you can remember. 2 years, maybe 3. The forest that used to feed your family is dead. The berries are gone. The animals your parents used to hunt have starved or moved on to places you'll never reach. There were 11 people in your group last season. Now there are 9. You are roughly 8 years old, and you have no idea that somewhere on an island called Sumatra, a volcano just exploded with a force 5,000 times greater than Mount St. Helens, burying entire continents in ash and turning the sky black for years. You also have no idea that you are one of the last humans left on Earth. Geneticists have a name for this moment, the Toba catastrophe, and the evidence suggests that around 70,000 years ago, it very nearly ended our species completely. Not with a bang, with a slow, grinding collapse that pushed the entire human population down to a number so small it's hard to believe you're reading this at all. So what was it actually like to be born into the worst window in human history? And how did anyone survive it? Let's go back. Not a few hundred years, not a few thousand. We need to go back roughly 70,000 years. You are a modern human, Homo sapiens. Your species has been around for about 300,000 years at this point. You've survived ice ages and megadroughts and competition from other human species. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus. Your ancestors were resilient, ingenious even. They crossed oceans on rafts, they painted caves, they buried their dead with flowers. But around 70,000 years ago, something happened that nearly ended all of it. Geneticists call it the Toba catastrophe theory. The name comes from a supervolcano on the island of Sumatra, what is now northern Indonesia, called Mount Toba. When it erupted, it didn't just erupt. It exploded with a force roughly 5,000 times greater than the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. It released somewhere between 2,800 and 6,900 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. To give you a sense of scale, that is enough ash to bury the entire continental United States under several meters of rock and soot. The sky went dark. Not for a day, not for a week, for years. Researcher Michael Rampino at New York University, along with Stanley Ambrose at the University of Illinois, proposed that the Toba eruption triggered what they called a volcanic winter, a collapse of global temperatures by somewhere between 3 and 5 degrees Celsius on average, with some regions dropping far more than that. In the context of a planet already in an ice age, that shift was not an inconvenience. It was catastrophic. Imagine being born into that. Not into a world of smoke and chaos. That part passed relatively quickly in geological terms. Imagine being born into the aftermath. Into a world where the forests have collapsed. Where the animals your ancestors hunted have starved or migrated to places your people cannot reach. Where the plants that fed you have died. Where the rivers run gray and the soil grows nothing. This is where it gets deeply strange. The genetic evidence suggests that the human population didn't just struggle during this period, it crashed hard. A 2000 study by Ambrose proposed that the total number of breeding humans on the entire planet may have dropped as low as 10,000 individuals. Some estimates go lower, as few as 2,000 reproductive adults. Think about that. Your entire species, every human being alive. Fewer people than fit inside many modern sports arenas. Geneticist Lynn Jord at the University of Utah has studied the patterns of genetic diversity in modern human populations and found something that confirms this picture. Human beings, as a species, have remarkably low genetic diversity compared to other great apes. Chimpanzees living in a single forest in Central Africa carry more genetic variation among themselves than all 8 billion humans alive today. The most plausible explanation for this bottleneck, this dramatic narrowing of the human gene pool, is a catastrophic population collapse sometime in our ancient past. Toba fits the timeline almost perfectly. So, if you were born in the worst possible moment, and some human was, because there had to be a last community, a final cluster of survivors struggling on the edge of extinction, what did your world look like? You were probably born somewhere in East Africa or South Asia. Those regions show the highest concentrations of pre-Toba genetic lineages. Your community was small, maybe 20 or 30 people, maybe fewer. There was no larger tribe to fall back on, no neighboring village to trade with. If your group collapsed, that was it. That particular branch of humanity ended forever. Your childhood, if you survived it, was spent in constant nutritional stress. The food web had been shattered. Large game animals had declined. Fruit-bearing trees and root plants had died back across vast regions. What you ate was whatever you could find. Grubs, bark, the occasional scavenged carcass. Researchers studying the teeth of humans from this general period have found evidence of enamel hypoplasia, growth disruptions in tooth development caused by severe malnutrition during childhood. The stress was written into the bones. You had no immunity to nothing new, because there was nothing new. The diseases that would later devastate human populations, the ones that came with agriculture and dense settlements and contact with livestock, those hadn't arrived yet. But that small mercy was drowned out by everything else. Disease wasn't your biggest enemy. Starvation was, and cold, and the slow, grinding pressure of a world that had forgotten how to support you. Here is the thing that makes this moment so specifically terrible, as opposed to other hard moments in human history. It was not a single event you could survive and then recover from. It was a cascade. The eruption triggered the volcanic winter. The volcanic winter triggered the collapse of vegetation. The collapse of vegetation triggered the collapse of the animals that fed on that vegetation. The collapse of those animals triggered the collapse of the humans who depended on them. And then you were left in a depleted world, trying to rebuild a population from almost nothing, in a landscape that had been fundamentally altered, with no certainty that it would ever return to what it was. Every child born during this window was born into a world that was not sure it wanted to keep going. And yet, someone survived. Not just survived, thrived. Within roughly 60,000 years of the Toba bottleneck, modern humans had spread across Africa, into the Middle East, across Asia, into Australia, eventually into the Americas, and across every habitable landmass on Earth. We went from a population that could have fit in a single stadium to 8 billion people. That expansion is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most improbable comebacks in the history of life on this planet. How? Anthropologist Curtis Moran at Arizona State University has argued that a key factor was the exploitation of coastal environments, shellfish in particular. Coastal caves in South Africa, sites like Pinnacle Point, show evidence of humans systematically harvesting marine resources during exactly this period of inland collapse. The ocean, unlike the devastated interior forests, continued to produce food. The tide came in and went out, regardless of how dark the sky was. Shellfish buried in the sand didn't care about volcanic ash. This coastal lifeline, Moran argues, may have been what kept the species alive long enough to recover. There is something quietly profound about that. The worst moment in human history may have been survived because a small group of people walked to the edge of the water and started eating things they hadn't eaten before. Curiosity, adaptability, a refusal to stop looking for another option. Those traits didn't come from nowhere. They were already in your ancestors before Toba. The eruption didn't create human resilience. It selected for it. The individuals who survived were not necessarily the strongest, not the most aggressive, not the ones with the best weapons. They were the ones who could adapt their behavior when the world changed under their feet. You carry that in your biology right now. The genetic bottleneck means that every human alive today is descended from those survivors. That impossibly small group clinging to coastal caves and river margins and whatever scraps the post-Toba world had left behind. The genetic patterns that Jord and others have documented are not just abstract data. They are a record of who made it. And the fact that they made it, the fact that you are here at all, is extraordinary. Think about the last time you faced something that felt unsurvivable. A loss, a collapse, a moment when the world stopped making sense, and the path forward disappeared. Your nervous system responded the way it always does. Anxiety, scanning for threats. the tight, desperate creativity of a mind trying to find a way through. That response was not designed for your life. It was designed for something far older and far harder. It was calibrated in a world where the sky had gone dark and the food had run out and there were only a few dozen of you left. You were born at the best possible time in human history. You have food and warmth and medicine and more accumulated human knowledge than any person in any previous era could have imagined. But the machinery inside you, the resilience, the adaptability, the refusal to give up, that was forged in the worst possible time. In the ash and the cold and the desperate quiet of a near-empty world. Somewhere around 70,000 years ago, someone very much like you decided to walk down to the water. They didn't know they were saving the species. They were just hungry. And that decision, that small, stubborn, unremarkable act of not giving up, is the reason you exist at all. If you made it this far, thank you for watching till the very end. Every video on this channel is a journey into our past to better understand who we are today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter of human history. Now, we would love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what question about ancient humans, evolution, or the human body should we explore next? Leave your answer in the comments. You might inspire our next video.